Cuffs are off, man. Get right. Too many left in these leagues, but I ain't gonna leave. I'ma get right. Get right. Down to the bottom and scratch it for all the...
Hey everybody, Adam Rank here.
What's up everybody? It's Marcus Grant.
This is AJ Dillon of the Green Bay Packers.
I gotta give a shout out to y'all at Get Right Fantasy.
If you are not subscribed, what are you waiting for? You want to lose your league?
Our league. Check out the Get Right Fantasy Network.
You got to get right with the Get Right Fantasy Network.
Best of luck with your podcast. Appreciate the support.
And you're tuned in to watch my boys at Get Right Fantasy Network. Get you right. Enjoy the show.
But I tune in every Friday. Strategies provided, I will lock in every way. So go and roll your sleeves up. Yeah, go roll your sleeves up. And I'm getting down, cause I roll my sleeves up. And I'm getting right, cause I roll my sleeves up.
What up? What up? What up, world? We are back. I'm Anthony, aka Rasta, and this is Get Right Fantasy Network. And today is Wednesday, September 4th, which means we are only one day away, guys. One more day away from real week one football points in our lineups. Looking there, checking scores, touchdowns matter, things matter. I'm here with my boy Phil from The Extra Point. Also found here on Thursdays at 4 o'clock. He'll be live right before game time tomorrow. How you doing, Phil? Welcome.
Bro, happy football eve. That's all I got to say. Happy football eve, man.
It's here, man.
It's like one more sleep. You're going to wake up tomorrow. It'll be the longest workday you have all week. But the minute that workday's over, you know what it is. It's TNF. Let's go.
You know what time it is, man. I'm so excited. I don't know how I'm going to get anything done tomorrow. I barely got anything done today. But, you know, got to still pay the bills and get those things done. So I'm excited, man, for sure. Before we roll our sleeves up here, man, and get to these start-sit questions, I'm so happy to be doing a start-sit show.
Let's go.
Why don't you tell the folks, now that we're shifting over to in-season schedule, what we have lined up here at Get Right Fantasy Network.
So we got content coming to you almost every day of the week. If you got a question, we got super chats now. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. So make sure you're jumping in every day you possibly can. Grab this content on Mondays. We got our guy Rasta with his boy, our boy, but his guy, truly your guy, Frank, 9 p.m. doing a recap of the week and a waiver show. On Tuesdays, you're going to get Tycoon from the Fantasy Boardroom, 7 p.m. Pacific time. Great content. Love that guy. Jump in there. Give him some love. Wednesday, you got Ant and Frank back again. So Rasta and Frank back for roster management, 9 p.m. Pacific time. They're going to be going through buy, sell, trade targets. Get you right for Thursday Night Football. You know Thursday's the start of the week, so get you right for that show. On Thursday, catch me, your boy Phil, 4 p.m. Pacific prior to Thursday Night Football. We're going to be shifting into some just like short content, getting stuff ready. We'll do a little bit since we're going to cover the Thursday night matchup on the main show. We'll just do like a little bit of the extra point. You need that little bit to win the championship, but definitely show up on Thursday night. We'll go through some great content. Boom, minute, an hour. That's it, done. We're out. We're going to go watch the game together. And then on Friday, you got the big double show. You got Mike and Ken holding it down at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. That will be Start Sit Part 1. We're going to go through half the matchups with those guys. Love their content. Love what they're all about. And then if for you late folks, West Coasters, come and hang out with me and your boy Rasta right now. 8 p.m.
Let's go, baby.
11 p.m. Eastern, Start Sit Part 2. If you miss it, everything's recorded on our YouTube channels. You can catch it on Spotify, Patreon, wherever you follow us. So if you want to jump in on Saturday, make sure you're dialed in for Sunday's lineups. Make sure you do that as well. And then on Sunday morning, we wrap the week with our boy Classic Mike, 8 p.m. Pacific time. 8 a.m.
Oh, yeah, that's my bad. See, I don't even work in AMs, man.
We're good, Don. We would have been.
It's been a while. It's been a while.
Active, inactive, live Q&A, just that last little bit up to the minute breaking news there on Sunday with Mike right before we kick off.
Great show.
Man,
little DFS in there as well. A little sprinkle DFS for you casual folks. You know, just set a lineup together. It's fun.
Right here.
Yeah, for sure. So well done, man. And like you said, if you do, obviously we love when you guys catch us live at those times. If you can't catch us, if we are too late, because, you know, we do this kind of on the side after work. We got kids and families and other jobs and things like that. But if you hit that subscribe button for us and keep liking and supporting the channel, we might be able to do this thing for you guys here even more. But we will have those timestamps and those chapters broken down in the description, so that'll really help. If you just want to hear about, one specific matchup or players, from that team, make sure you guys go down into the description and check that out there. And you'll be set up, and we'll have those for all the shows when we do waivers, things like that. We'll have everything broken down in the description there. So make sure you guys are checking that out. Again, hit that like and subscribe button for us, man. Helps us grow. We are trying to hit 1,300 subs, man. We just hit 1,222 today. So it's awesome to see this thing continue to grow. So make sure you guys are here with us, and let's go win some championships this year, man. And like you said, we have the super chats now. So we see the chat, starting to pop off already. What's up, guys? Good to see LeBron in the house, Robert, George. Love seeing these some new faces as well, too. We got Kish in here. Just letting you guys know, if you guys want your, team rated, have a question for us, you want us to get to it immediately, you can throw us a little super chat, something small, but something that gets our attention, allows us to stop the show. Otherwise, we do want to kind of stay on track, stay on schedule, kind of keep the show as close to an hour as we can. We might go a little long here as we're kind of setting up the season here for us here tonight. But we want to get you guys in and out of here as well and get you the information that you need. But of course, we do want to pay attention to the folks in the chat. So we will do a live Q&A section, even if my boy Phil has to leave. You guys know I will. I was going to say he probably won't. But as you guys know, man, we've sometimes done like a 4-hour stream because we want to get to every question in the chat. So make sure you guys do check that out. And we will get to them, as well, too. So tonight we are going to break down 8 teams. Of course, we'll start with the Thursday night football game and just do 8 of the matchups here this week. And then on Friday, we will be back. Phil and I actually breaking down the other 8. So we actually get to break down all 16 games this week, which I'm excited about.
I'm stoked.
And I'm sure Kendall will probably be here with us as well. Classic may stop by for a little bit as well, too. So you might even get all 4 of us at the beginning of Friday to kick this thing off, man. So we're all super excited to get this stuff going. So anything else you got to say, man, before we roll these sleeves up, man? Or are you ready to get this thing going?
Let's go. Let's give the people what they came here for.
For sure, man. So let's get into this thing here. First thing and let me hit the new banner here. Check it out. We got the scrolling banner with the updated schedule, everything in there. And then look at us now getting fancy. Ravens at Chiefs. We got the Chiefs favored by 3 with an over-under of 47 points. Thursday night, tomorrow, to kick things off for week 1, a rematch of the AFC Championship game. 2 great defenses, 2 great offenses. So what a way to showcase this year. Some changes on both sides of the ball. Obviously, the Ravens left that game thinking, why did we only rush a couple times in this game when that was like the only weakness of the Chiefs? So what did they do? They went out and got Derrick Henry to maybe kind of hammer that idea home. So I'm very excited to see how this potentially plays out.
I see what you did there.
Right. And then and then we have on the Chiefs side, of course, they're revamped. They lost a key piece on the defense, of course, with Snead moving over, I think, to Tennessee, right? Got paid over there. And so now they did beef up, of course, their offense, though. So we might see Mahomes return back to his 5,000, and 40 TDs or something this year, which is pretty exciting. Obviously, with his weapons, the big news with Rashee Rice looking like he will be playing an active week 1, no suspension looming, at least at this time, could change any moment. So with that said, some injuries to look at heading into the game. We have wide receiver Hollywood Brown. He's been ruled out with a sternoclavicular. I knew I was going to mess this up as soon as I wrote it. Sternoclavicular dislocation, whatever that even is. Obviously, clavicle got dislocated. He's going to be out for a while. And then on the Ravens side, Mark Andrews was actually not on the injury report after missing a bunch of practice time here kind of in the preseason. They said it was an undisclosed issue. But he returned back to practice last week, and he wasn't even on the week 1 injury report. So Ravens are healthy heading into this thing. Lost a couple pieces on defense. So again, this is going to be real exciting. Phil, we're not going to, of course, you're starting, you're starting Mahomes, you're starting Lamar, of course, you're starting Andrews and Kelsey, right? We can kind of eliminate those. But let's dive into these wide receivers is where I kind of want to start. On the Chiefs side, how do you have those wide receivers listed? Do you have any of those guys at specific starts or sits there?
I mean, I think Rashee Rice is a start until he's not, right? I think at the end of, last season, Rasta, you and I have had this conversation a ton. We love the way that he finished the season, the playoffs, obviously, the Super Bowl. If he doesn't go out and get in trouble, we're talking about him as, I think, an easy 3rd-round pick.
Easy.
So,
and that's about where he started flying up to and when we started drafting for real, I'll tell you that.
I just took him in a draft in the 3rd round because I knew he wouldn't get back to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I knew, and the 3 guys in the chat were like, "Oh, I can't believe you took him that early." I was trying to be sneaky and take him. Like I knew guys would know about him. So you're not putting a 3rd round pick on your bench. You're obviously starting Rashee Rice. Hollywood's out. That benefits Rice. I don't believe Samaje Perine's in the conversation this week. I think it's going to be Pacheco. So, maybe he'll catch a couple passes, Perine. But my point being is I think the bulk of the targets go to Rashee Rice and Kelsey. I'm not going to start Worthy. I understand the appeal. I understand why people want to. He's the wide receiver 2 very clearly on the depth chart. He's over the top. He's got a role. But I need to see it. And I think you probably grabbed Worthy late enough in your drafts. So you have better pieces that you can at least roll out on week 1. And then after week 1, if he has and shows, some flashes, sure. Maybe we'll talk about him next week.
Okay. And then obviously they had a signing of Juju Smith-Schuster returning back to the Chiefs. Last time that Mahomes was the top quarterback or had 1,000-yard receiver, I think it was Juju, I think. So interesting there. Obviously, we don't see we're sitting him this week. Not quite sure his role, just joining the team there.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. To be honest, I haven't seen him be drafted. So I mean, he's probably a guy that's on your waiver wire. So if he has a great week, go rush to the wire, and you feel like it's going to be sustainable, give it some fab spend. But it's not a guy that I think is going to be super relevant. Minus
Perfect.
He has one crazy big play, and then no one saw that coming, and hopefully he's your $3,000 player in your DFS lineup, and that's how you win off him. So there you go. Exactly.
And so on the Ravens side of the ball at the wide receiver position, you have Zay Flowers, you have Rashad Bateman, and then you have Devontae Walker potentially looming there as well. I believe Nelson Aguilar is still there. So what are we doing with these pass catchers?
To me, it's Andrews obviously is the clear start at tight end, regardless of being on the injury report or not. And then I think you take a look at Flowers in your flex. I wouldn't start him in my receiver spot. I think he does profile as a nice flex play this week. We talked at the beginning of the show. Snead's been sent out. So you've got maybe a new player at corner. I'll be honest, I haven't seen who they re-signed, so I don't know that depth chart. But you've got someone that's newer, regardless of where they're coming from. And so I think you've got to take a look at Flowers. I think
McDuffie's their best cornerback there right now.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think that. I mean, they didn't even shadow Flowers with Snead in the AFC game, so I doubt they're going to do it with McDuffie. So
the 2 questions that I always have, it's the Chiefs: is Jones going to wreck the game, right? Is Chris Jones just going to destroy the game, and then all of a sudden your Ravens aren't valuable? And then the other question I have really is, I don't know that Rashad Bateman's relevant. Again, I think he's probably a guy that's on your waiver wire. So if you've got better options, if you're in a 2 wide receiver league, I think Worthy's definitely a flex play. If you're in a 3 wide receiver league, you might be forced to play him, but I think a flex is where I feel more comfortable.
I'm right there with you. Like him as a flex, questionable as a wide receiver 3. You probably drafted him that way, so most likely can't get away from it. I think I have him. Literally right as in that wide receiver 3 range. Yeah, somewhere in there. So, I have my whole.
I just want to say something real quick,
but yeah,
really quick, Rasta, because it's funny. It's in the chat, so I'm just looking at it real quick. To be honest, I was going to say this later, so I'm kind of glad Tresnor did. Let's give him some love for throwing this in the chat. He said, "Don't lock up your flex Thursday night. That's dumb." It's 100% true.
Football 101.
These games, yeah, but there's players that maybe just don't understand because, well, it's a wide receiver. Why does it matter, right? There's a Thursday night game this week. There's a Friday night game this week. If you have players, and you do, because it's Eagles, Packers, I mean, it's teams that are very fantasy relevant. Please take those players, put them in your wide receiver and your tight end spot so you keep the flex open for the weekend, because if you're I don't know if it's on the slate. I forgot to look, but we might be previewing a certain Bengal and where he should be played or shouldn't be played later. So, but my point is you want to have some variability for Sunday. If you need to make a swap, you can do that in your flex. You can't do that in your position lineups.
Well said. All right. So running backs here, Isaiah Pacheco on one side, looks like CH. I don't think I've seen him officially be inactive, but he's kind of been away.
The tweet I saw said most likely going because of the PTSD,
right?
4 weeks on the pup. So yeah, that's
okay. So he's pretty much out. Obviously they signed some Samaje Perine over there. They say he is going to be active and playing this week. Deneric Prince, kind of a preseason little darling. Pretty much that backfield there. Pretty much all to Pacheco. Do you have him as a start this week? must start or just a decent start?
I mean, I
against this Ravens D.
I think he's a solid start. I know the Ravens D historically is very good. It's week 1. We don't know which defense. Like, you're going to see your lineups go, oh, well, so-and-so's got the 32nd.
Lost Patrick McQueen. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, like, you just don't know because the rankings you see in your lineups are from last season. But if we're going to take a bet on the Ravens having a solid defense, it's always a safe bet. So I think Pacheco is still a start because of the volume. And obviously, if he gets a touchdown, there's your week. That's what you're asking him to do. If you're, I would just say this really quickly. It's not my favorite thing to put a running back in the flex spot, but let's say that you're thinner at wide receiver and you could afford to put a running back who plays later in the weekend at flex and then put Pacheco in that running back spot. I'm okay with that as well. I'd rather have the receiver in that flex spot, but I do think he's worthy of a start or a flex depending on your roster construction there.
I'm pretty high on Pacheco, man. Just I don't see anyone there taking anything from him, especially Pirine. Maybe later on once he gets more, into the offense and all those crazy plays that, they want to do, but they're not putting him on the field when they're doing a behind the pack pass. He hasn't been there for all that, so I'll take my chances with Pacheco. I have him as my RB10 this week, followed by, or precursored by actually Derrick Henry, who I have as my RB9. So I kind of have these guys both back to back this week. Not expecting anything really from Justice Hill. Interested to see if they do work him in third down or 2-minute drills. That's kind of what I'm looking for there. But other than that, anyone else from this game, or you ready to move on?
The last thing I just want to say is just what you kind of echo really quickly. I'm really interested to see what Derrick Henry's usage is because I want to know if we were truly going to buy, or at least this first preview game. I mean, it's first week, right? Is it really going to truly be touchdown dependent, or, I want to see what kind of volume he gets. So that's just something to keep in mind for those that drafted Derrick Henry of what you might want to see for some positive signs.
There we go. All right. So we will move on. Before we do here really quick, I do just want to remind you guys, I see a lot of people popping up in the chats, maybe people just rolling in. We did mention at the beginning of the show, we will try to get to any questions that you guys put in the chat in our live Q&A section at the end of these 8 breakdowns. If you do need your question answered right away, you can drop a super chat for us. We will get to it in between breakdowns. So, we won't stop what we're doing at the moment, but as soon as we get to a break like this, we will get to any super chat that comes up. Otherwise, if you do have to ask your question and go, you can always listen to it next week. We will have it in the timestamp down in the description, and you can go to the live Q&A section and just wait for your question to be asked there. So we will continue to move on here. So next game that we have here on the slate is going to be Packers at Eagles. Let's bring up our new banner here. A Friday night game, one of the first times I think maybe since like COVID that we had because I think we had a game every day of the week during the COVID year is one of those kind of things. Yeah. So this is going to be the first time since then to have a game on Friday. Literally messed up our entire programming schedule here for our show because of course we don't want to compete with the NFL. Who would want to? So we know you watch anything. We'll watch a preseason game over watching our show here. So we have Packers Eagles, man, in Brazil, Friday night football, -2.5. Eagles are favored, and with an over-under of 49 points, one of the highest here this week, projected with these offenses here, and not great defenses. So for fantasy purposes, this should be a very nice matchup. So let's start here at the quarterback positions. Obviously, Jalen Hurts is a de facto must start, no question. Where you drafted Jordan Love, you're most likely starting him, obviously in Superflex and 1 QB. Where do you have Jordan Love here this week against this Philly D?
It's 100% a start in 2 QB or Superflex. I don't think that's even a question. I think he has top 10 potential on the season. We just saw a top 5 overall finish from him last year. I have him very safely as a QB1 this year. I just think that he's the player to own in Green Bay, given all the weapons he has, but he's the only one guaranteed to have the ball. So yeah, I don't think you have to consider it too much. Don't think twice. If you're in a single quarterback league, it's probably the only quarterback on your roster, most likely. If it's not, then take a look at your matchup. But I love this. The only downside of this game is it's not week 6 in Green Bay or in Philly, because could you imagine what that, assuming these teams start the way we think they're going to start, what a game that could have been. But this will be a great one
for sure. I pretty much agree with you there. I have Love as my QB10. Couldn't get him inside of my top 10, but I have him right there at 10. So pretty happy with that. That ranking there. Obviously, Hurts I have as, my QB3 this week. Probably could even get higher than that. So no questions there. Let's talk about the running backs here. On the Packers side, of course, we have a new addition, Josh Jacobs, with basically no running backs behind him. AJ Dillon on the IR. And of course, Marshawn Lloyd dealing with a hamstring injury as well. And I know I have it on the notes here. Why don't I just look at that? I'm trying to go all off my hamstring injury. And then you have Emmanuel Wilson dealing with the hip. That's what it was. So it looks like Wilson's closer to being active this week than Lloyd is. There's a chance they're both active. But if anyone does see any touches behind Jacobs, it's most likely going to be Wilson from what we're kind of hearing today on Wednesday. Are these running backs the main running backs here, Saquon and Josh Jacobs, pretty much must starts here week one?
I mean, you drafted Saquon at the 1-2 turn, right? So he's in there. I really just I think there's potential here. It's so early in the season, fitness and getting schemes dialed in on a short week, like no film really other than last season. I think it's very possible this game hits the over, which means I think Jacobs with all that volume could end up getting a touchdown while there's still enough left over for the other guys, the receivers and tight ends. And there's nobody. So if they get anywhere inside the red zone, especially goal line, I mean, you got to love Jacobs this week. Whether, I think a lot of people have struggled. I've personally also done it. I've struggled with him for his season long value. I'm very high on Marshawn Lloyd. But I think if you're in a DFS, I haven't looked at DFS. I don't know where he's priced, probably towards the top. I think it could be just a really good week for Josh Jacobs, regardless of his outcome this whole season. I think it's just a great way to start. He could
literally have like a 90% snap share this week. Like I wouldn't be surprised.
He could have 30 yards and just get two goal line scores. You know what I mean? And that makes your week. Like that's in a range of outcomes for him this week. For sure. Again, we'll take questions when what's kind of relevant like this. We'll bring it up if it corresponds with our game. I think Wicked brings up a good point here. Obviously, love is a must start. We answered that, but I think the weather and the atmosphere down in Brazil, does that play any type of role with your start sit decisions here? You're pretty much starting them as we go. I mean, you're starting them either way. I just think there's the ceiling case is this game hits the over, the defenses are bad, and these guys can just air it out while leaving an extra touchdown there for the running backs. I think that's the ceiling. The floor is that it's hot and muggy and it's a new environment. They just got there. Like this, it may be a little lower, but I think you're still starting them.
There we go. All right, that's cool. So let's go to the tight ends on the injury report. You have Tucker Kraft, the tight end 2 there for the Packers. He popped up on the injury report after not being listed on Tuesday, meaning that he should be recovered from that torn pec muscle that he suffered during the offseason. However, he might be listed as questionable or may not even play based on this new back injury. We all know backs can just tighten up and you can't move or do anything. Doesn't matter, what's going on. If you can't move around, you're not playing any football. So just something to keep an eye on. Obviously, we expect Luke Musgrave to, obviously still be the tight end 1 there, but they talked a lot about playing dual tight ends with these guys and what they did respectively last year. So it will be interesting to see what happens there. And then on the other side, Dallas Goedert, he was dealing with an oblique injury. He's not on the injury report this week and is good to go for Friday after missing a little bit of time, but he came back just this last Sunday. So he's practicing in full. So these 2 tight ends, let's just start with Musgrave and Goddard. Where do you have these guys as starts or sits this week?
I think these are sits for me. The volume in the the wide receiving core, the running backs being guys that are very much non-committee guys. Sorry, my brain just went blank there.
You're good.
They're obviously getting the the work at bell cow status. I'm out on to be honest, I'm just out on all the tight ends in this game this week. And I think the way that, especially if you've drafted recently, Goddard's been dropping, it's very possible there's someone better on the waiver wire that you could grab, or maybe you've got a second tight end. So yeah, I just don't think there's enough there. I think it's totally touchdown dependent, and I just don't see it.
Yeah, pretty much with you there on that one. So yeah, I mean, I have them both sits as well. I mean, it does get tough at tight end. Like you said, you probably have to start Goddard because you drafted him as a starter, which is, as I look at my rings here, I did kind of put him at tight end 12. So I guess he kind of does make just that starting list, just kind of in that situation this week. But yeah, if I don't want to help, I'm not going to really, so put it this way, I'm not going to drop Goddard that I just drafted to get someone off the wire to just stream week 1 because of a potential bad matchup. We're not sure what's going to happen. You should have kind of expected that with that team build and targeting someone like Goddard anyway. So for the most part, you're just going to roll him out there and hope you're not playing against like, Laporta or Kelsey or, someone like that this week. Hopefully you're playing against the Pitts owner who we'll get into, I think, Friday or something like that. So I don't know if that's on this docket. Are we doing Falcons today? I don't know. We'll see. Oh, it's up next. Look at that. We'll get into it here in a second. We'll get into there in a second. Why didn't I put it on there? I might have brain farted on there. At least I know it. Ooh, that would have been tough. All right. So anything else? We got the wide receivers. Wide receivers here in this game. Pretty much must starts all around, at least. I think for the top 4 wide receivers in this game, which to me are obviously A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. I think you got to get Christian Watson in your lineups this week. If you drafted him, maybe you drafted him at a point where he's maybe your wide receiver 4 or a flex, or he's sitting on your bench and you're just kind of sitting in a pretty spot. And then, Jaden Reed, you probably are having to start just based on where you had to draft him. Dobbs becomes an interesting play there. So let's talk about these Green Bay wide receivers between Watson, Reed, and Dobbs. Kind of where do you have them ranked, and are you starting or sitting them this week? I'm
going to sit Christian Watson for the simple fact of this. The reason why I think people who have Christian Watson might also agree. I need to see it. I think people who have him are like, okay, this is it, right? There's other players in the league that have burned you in the.
I don't know if anybody has him. I think I have him everywhere that I don't think anybody else has him.
I just want to see it, right? Romeo Dobbs, if you're really thin at wide receiver and you really need a flex play, again, there's going to be touchdowns in this game. It's going to be a game. I think the whole season's going to be like this, to be honest, without injuries. It just might be that, guys. It's a little bit like San Francisco. There's other teams where it's just sometimes just your week. So you hope if you're playing Dobbs, it's his week. And then Dontavian Wicks is probably out for me. But Jaden Reed, I think you're playing him. And if your team's really deep at wide receiver, then he's certainly in your flex. But I just think Watson and Wicks are my sits. And I'll definitely take a Reed and Dobbs in my flex flyer if I need it. But I'd feel okay with that.
All right, and I'm pretty much right there with you on those as well. Obviously, no Jahan Dotson, right? Like that's not a thing, right? Okay, all right. We have to say the names, right? We got to at least go through all the names.
I think we all want it. We all want it to be right. We thought it would be this way.
I was the biggest Dotson fan last year, man. Oh, don't get me started.
I took some shares. Anyway,
we'll keep it moving.
Yeah.
All right. So again, appreciate everybody in the chat. Again, if you guys have any immediate questions you want answered, of course, you can drop them in the chat. Throw us a super chat if you want us to get to it in between the next games. If not, we will get to as many questions as we can at the end of the show. So let's go ahead and bring up our next game here, which we were just talking about, kind of, with our boy Pitts. We have Steelers at Falcons. We have the Falcons favored by 3.5 points with an over-under a little lower, 42-point side, kind of right in there, about average. At least it's over 40. So there's could be some points here. Obviously more implied here on the Falcons side. As far as injuries that we're dealing with in this game, on the Steelers side, you have running back Jaylen Warren dealing with the hamstring. He was limited last Thursday, I believe it was. He's been, or I might have just typed the wrong thing. I think he was limited here today, Wednesday. He's been dealing with that issue for a few weeks since August 17th, but said he would have played the last preseason game if it were a regular season. He kind of doubled down on that with reporters on Monday saying that he is going to be playing week 1. Yep. So all systems look like they will be going that backfield with Arthur Smith. So I can't wait to see what the mad scientist rolls out here between Najee and Warren.
I can wait. You get back to me. You let me know how that experience.
It's like a car wreck, you can't help but look, right? You can't look away. Oh man. Other than that, Steelers pretty much are healthy. Roman Wilson looks like he's going to be back. We'll get into that here in just a second. On the Falcons side of the ball, you have Kirk Cousins, of course, coming off that Achilles. He did an interview today. Says he's basically ready and excited for week 1. So no question that he's going to be playing and suited up and ready to go. However, the big news coming out of Falcons camp or practice today, Kyle Pitts showing up on the injury report. I believe it was a hammy that he's dealing with right now. So let's start there with the tight ends in this game, Pat Freiermuth and Pitts. And let's just start with Pitts with the low-hanging fruit there. How are you feeling after all the excitement and then boom, an injury right before week 1?
I feel fine because as much as I love Kyle Pitts, I grew up in Gainesville, Florida, go Gators. I don't have him anywhere. So I don't have to deal with this problem. So I feel fantastic. How do I feel? I think people are just doing exactly what they should be doing. Panicking a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. It is the day before, it's the week of the season because they don't play till Sunday. And now he's on the injury report and he's just burned you and burned you and burned you. So sadly, I don't think you're going to have a choice. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's probably a game time decision if he's on the injury report already on Thursday.
Yeah, he did practice limited. He said he expects to be healthy. So it's trending positive, but not something you want to deal with.
You're probably not getting ceiling, though, if he's dealing with a hammy. You're going to get some points, but you're probably not getting a ceiling Kyle Pitts week 1 performance. So the problem is you drafted him to be your tight end once, so you have to play him or you have to find someone else on your bench if he's out that you can drop to, or you're taking a 0. That's the downside. Are you starting any of these waiver wire guys over Pitts? If if he doesn't go, what are maybe a couple names you maybe think of? Ben Sinnott maybe went undrafted there for you. It's probably there. I think crazy. Okay, maybe Conklin, maybe Theo Johnson. There's like Malik Neighbors, Kate Otten might have made your waiver wire. I would take him. I would take the Green Bay, the guys we just talked about that I said I don't want to play, but I could probably play the Green Bay guys over Pitts. Musgrave, if I took Kraft really late, Anyway, it's just, it sucks because you want it to work and you want it to be great. I'll just say on a betting line real quick, I think this game's the under. I know it's a low line to begin with. Like you said, just hit 40, but the Steelers' offense doesn't look great. And if the Falcons aren't good, then it's a low scoring game. And if they are good, maybe they just blow them out and then they're just got to shut it down. So it's Falcons made moves on the defensive side this year too. They should be good. Got some safety help, got some linebacker. They're making some moves. So spend some money. I could see it hitting the under and being a lower scoring, kind of like a week 1, 17-13. You know what I mean? Just kind of touchdown here, touchdown there. Could be. All right. So let's see. Where do we want to go from here? Let's go to the running backs. Let's talk. Fairmouth real quick. I actually think if you punted tight end, you probably have Pat Freiermuth. Right. Roman Wilson is back. How healthy is he? We don't know. Van Jefferson, we can't believe is really going to be the guy when and if Roman is back. So I think in week 1, it could be a nice Freiermuth. George Pickens is kind of the 2 receiving options. And again, if he gets a touchdown, that's you can't ask for better than that. 40 yards, Give me 40 yards and a touchdown from the Muth. I'm all very happy. Yeah, I'm so happy. 2-3 catches, good to go. That's it. That's all I need. Without the touchdown, it's rough. But if you give me the touchdown, 9-10 we're points, good. Hey, any tight end scored a touchdown, you'll take it. And it's always like the third string tight end. It's going to be like 3 third-string tight ends that score week 1 and just it's why upset fantasy big time. Yeah, why Durham Smith always happens on the Dolphins. Always, man. Hey, they got Jonnu there this year. I don't know. This should be interesting. We'll get to that game here in a little bit too. All right. So you kind of talked about the wide receiver. So let's just kind of go there. You kind of pretty much spelled it out. Pickens, are you starting this week? Where kind of do you have him ranked? I found myself a little lower than him here, like you said, just because of this Falcons defense. Not quite sure how this offense is going to roll. Didn't look good in the preseason. If I can hold him off, I don't think I have him as a start in 2 wide receiver leagues. I prefer him as a flex in a 3 wide receiver league. If you're, I don't want to say desperate week 1, but maybe you just have a bunch of rookies kind of behind Pickens and he's your wide receiver 3, then you kind of might have to start him there. I don't think I can do like a BTJ or, someone like that over him quite yet. Xavier Worthy, I'm not quite that off on Pickens. So where are you coming in at with those guys? I think Pickens is a sit for me unless you have to. It's 2 things if my memory's right. The Falcons attacked cornerback in the free agency market pretty heavily, if my memory's right. That's an area where they were poor. The problem is Pickens going to be streaky? You have to play Pickens. This is why I don't tend to draft a lot of this type of a player. I'm not saying George Pickens specifically, but guys in this kind of a situation where great best ball player, 100%, right? Like Jameson Williams, Gabe Davis, don't have to worry about it. I just think it's difficult because they didn't sign Brandon Ayuk. They don't have anyone else really there. That's why I like Pat Freiermuth this week if you're going to play him as a streamer or if a late tight end. But to me, it's just pretty easy to see Pickens either dominating like he does or just getting taken out of the game because he's the only weapon. So if you can sit him, I prefer to sit him against this defense or what we think this defense is. Perfect. And then we'll swing over the other side of the ball there, or not of the ball, but the other wide receiver room across the hall. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. Drake London, obviously, he's a start where you drafted him. Don't have to really talk much there. Hopefully, that connection gets going with Cousins. But talk to me about Darnell Mooney. What are we doing there with Mooney?
I wouldn't start him, but I do think if you drafted Mooney late, it's a good pick. And I also think if you have some space, you can go look on the waiver wire. He's probably there. It's possible. So I think for me, it's probably not a start, but I do think it actually helps Drake London's value with the Kyle Pitts news being not stellar right now.
Right.
If Pitts doesn't go and you're just so thin, I could think you could start Mooney to flex, but you'd have to be really, you know what I mean? Like I don't see it, and he's just an interesting guy he's an interesting player to keep an eye on.
Right. And then obviously we're sitting Ray McCloud as the wide receiver 3 over there right now.
But we love Ray.
Yeah, there you go. Our boy. So we have obviously running back room. We're starting Bijan. What are we doing with Tyler Algier? Obviously we're sitting him, right? Yep. One of the best handcuffs, I think, in the league, 1,000-yard rusher in a number 1 role. So really no questions about him. Should anything happen, and I'm knocking on every piece of wood I can knock on with the moves I made for Bijan this offseason in Dynasty and here in Redraft.
Let's move on.
Exactly. So yeah, let's not talk about that. And then as far as Warren and Najee, we'll kind of circle back to that. Where officially do you have those guys either ranked and or starting or sitting them this week?
I have them in my my RB2s, and then I would sit Warren because of the hamstring. I don't care what he says. I just want to see it. You probably can afford to sit him on your roster. He's probably your RB3 or 4. I think if you drafted Najee as your RB2, he's in there, and if you didn't, then you're not starting him.
Yeah, so I have Najee as my RB23, so literally right in there as your back end RB2. I'm going to have Warren right in that kind of middle of RB3 kind of flex range if you need to, based on where you kind of drafted him or depending on your build at RB33 this week, just because, of that potential receiving upside. He may not have to have a lot of touches in a full PPR to produce some points for you. So we'll move on here. I know we're probably going a little long. It's our first show of the season, guys. We're excited to talk about all this stuff instead of just a mock draft. We're talking about actual football happening now, man. So this is exciting. So again, if you guys have any questions, drop them in the chat. We will get to them. If you do want your question answered immediately, you can drop a super chat. Otherwise, we'll keep on going here. So let's go ahead and move on to the next game, which is going to be, let's see here, Cardinals at the Bills. We have the Bills favored by 6.5 with a 48-point over-under here. What are we doing in this game here, starting at the quarterback positions with Murray and Josh Allen? We're basically starting those guys. So let's get to running backs here. James Cook and James Conner. We're starting both of these guys, so not much to kind of talk about there. You're obviously starting Marvin Harrison Jr. We're starting, I guess that's it, wide receivers. This is where I guess the discussion happens. So wide receivers here, let's start on the Cardinals side. Do you see any value in Wilson and Dortch?
Not this week. I think Wilson's going to be a good player this season. I think there's going to be games after we get a sense of who the Cardinals are and we get a sense of some of their upcoming defensive opponents of where their weaknesses are. There could be weeks for him. I think week 1's not the week. I like Wilson, but it's not this week.
Okay. And then on the Bill side, that's where it's a little more kind of questionable. Obviously, a lot of opportunity there, but are we comfortable starting any of these guys here week 1 with all these vacated targets we've been talking about all offseason? So let's talk about the trio of Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and Curtis Samuel, who is dealing with a little toe injury, but he did practice in full today. So he seems to be ready to go week 1. So with all 3 of these guys, how do you have them as far as start sits?
I mean, I would take a shot on Coleman in my flex, and if you're in a 2 wide receiver league and maybe you've got some weaker running backs, I think that's certainly an interesting place because again, we expect him to be the guy. I think Kincaid's a must start, obviously at the tight end position, and we think James Cook's obviously a must start. So if you're going to start one guy, I'd start Coleman just because the hope is the touchdown is there. If you're in a really deep league, I just can't really press the button on Khalil Shakir just yet, even with Curtis Samuel's toe. I'm just not quite ready. And to be fair, I'm not quite ready on Coleman. You know what I mean? Like if I can avoid starting all those guys, I would. If you have in a deeper league and you have to take a shot, I would just take the shot on Coleman.
All right. For me, I like Shakir as a flex. So I'm there with that. I just think, he's the only one on that team that's caught a real reception from Josh Allen in a real game so far. So week 1, I feel comfortable pretty much. And I was on him until they kind of drafted Coleman. Like I thought Shakir was going to be my biggest like sleeper and most owned guy. Obviously Coleman kind of killed that, which isn't bad. I wasn't, big on him as a prospect. Coming out, but obviously size you can't teach and opportunity you can't teach. Some of those things you just have to get the luck of the draw, so to speak. So I'll kind of take my shot on that type of situation. I'd like to hold off on Coleman week 1 if I could. But like you said, if you're kind of forced to throw him in your flex in a 3 wide receiver flex league, I don't think I'd want him in as a flex in my 2 wide receiver in a flex league. I think that's still, a little early. I'd like him more as your wide receiver 4 or 5, is where I'm at there. So, and other than that, I'm not the biggest Curtis Samuel fan. I'm sitting him week 1 just to kind of see what the role, kind of looks like. Yeah, you may miss out on a touchdown or something. But that's a risk I'm willing to take.
Agreed.
All right.
Good.
So tight ends here, obviously Dalton Kincaid. We're starting him. Let's just talk about Knox real quick. Is he a sneaky kind of potential play here week 1? Obviously with the uncertainty that we just talked about, having been the only other guy, besides Kincaid and Shakir that have caught a pass in a real game, and quite a few of them, and for a lot of touchdowns from Josh Allen that he feels comfortable with there. And we did see, when he did come back from being healthy at the end of last year, they were playing Knox and Kincaid at the same time. So we can see that 12 personnel kind of happen as well. So is that something, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with everything, right? The 12 personnel, I think it's something we'll certainly see. If I'm going to take a shot on anyone, like we talked about, it's going to be Shakir or Coleman. And I'm certainly not going to take a Knox this week. Not for me.
Like over Goddard or someone like would you're not doing something like that, or over Fairmouth or something like that? Maybe a guy you drafted high that you're not sure of.
I think it's very possible Dawson Knox is going to catch some passes and he might siphon a touchdown or 2 that should go to Kincaid this season, but I think he's in there to block and be an extra guy on the line, and Kincaid's the pass catcher. Kind of there. Okay. Or just a random like safety blanket here and there. Probably make like one of the biggest catches of like the season in an important game or something. No doubt,
but not just the constant volume and consistency that you want.
Against the Chiefs, and that'll be his catch,
Right. You can see it now. Oh, I can't wait for the no-handed catch, right?
Dawson Knox goes viral.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So what have we covered everything there? Wide receivers, running backs.
That game's pretty easy. That one's
pretty easy there. Yeah. All right, let's do it. So before we get to the second, we have 4 more games to go. We're a little behind on schedule, but Phil, why don't you tell the folks real quick about our guys over at Underdog Fantasy?
Yeah, so love Underdog Fantasy. Great supporters of the show. Appreciate them. Obviously, if you all know about Underdog Fantasy, you're in. If you're not, it is the best and easiest place to play fantasy sports. From their best ball tournaments, which means you draft your team, no season long, time commitment, no waivers, no trades, and the best part, no weekly lineup setting. Rasta placed 42nd out of 70,464, turned his $4 entry into almost 400. So great contests over there. If you're interested in their pick'em contest, you can go pick their higher or lowers on player stats like total yards and touchdowns. If you are new, use the promo GETRIGHT, GETRIGHT, Get Right, and receive a 50% deposit match. Put in $250 and you'll get, put in, what did you write?
Oh no! See, I didn't update it all the way. Instead of the $250 that you used to get, they've now upped it to $1,000 in bonus cash now. So
I don't even think I got $250 when I started with them. I think it was like
100. I was part of the 100 and 100 crew. Yeah.
So was I, man. Any deposit exceeding $2,000 will be capped at $1,000 in bonus cash. Visit underdogfantasy.com or download the fastest growing fantasy sports app from your phone. Love those guys. Let's jump in on the Titans Bears, man.
Let's get to it. Titans Bears, like you said, we have the Bears coming in as favorites here by 4 with a 44.5 point over under. So kind of in their average, not expecting too much here potentially in this game. We have some interesting, of course, storylines though coming out of this game. Obviously, the Bears, are interesting with the number 1 pick, and of course, Roma Dunze, and so I'm excited to see how this offense goes here. So let's just start at the quarterback position here. Caleb Williams in a 1 QB league, is he in your top 12? Is he a must start this week, or if you have the luxury, would you prefer to have him on your bench week 1?
I prefer to have him on my bench. I love Caleb. Dynasty outlook is fantastic. Season long value this year. We're seeing if he's going to chase and eclipse 4,000 yards. So even this year, there's some intrigue. I don't know that the Titans are the best group, to be honest. So it might be a week you could, but I'd prefer not to. I think if you drafted him that way, if it's 1 quarterback league and you punted the position and that was your punt option, then you're obviously in. But yeah, I want to see it. I want to see it. And if there's 1 good week, plug and play next week if you feel good, if you feel strong enough about it.
There we go. I saw all I needed to saw to draft a ton of them when my real drafts mattered. Seeing just some of the throws off balance. I mean, there were times where he literally, and I hate to even make this comparison, and I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form is he on this level, but he looks like Mahomes when he's playing, and he looks like Aaron Rodgers at times when he's playing, with just some of the arm angles and the velocity that he has on the ball. And kind of the pinpoint accuracy, whether he's getting lucky or we'll see if he can show consistency on it, because he didn't do as good the second outing as he did the first outing. So there's going to be some growing pains here and there. But yeah, I've seen what I needed to see, man. He flashed enough for me to see some potential there, obviously in Dynasty, 101, pick this year in your rookie drafts. In super flex leagues, of course, I'm sure we both have him as a must start in your super flex leagues, possibly as your QB1 in that type of situation with the different builds you can do there. So we're not questioning that. But just with the depth of quarterback this year, let's just be happy that someone with Caleb Williams' talent isn't even a top 12 guy week 1. And you can kind of see how that fits out on your bench throughout the year. So could be a nice asset. Let's flip it over to the other side. Let's talk about the Titans QB here, Will Levis. Obviously went later drafted, probably not even a start in a super flex league. I don't have him as a start in super flex. However, his arm does interest me. He is kind of a gunslinger, isn't afraid to throw that deep ball. We saw that last year. Obviously it's going to help if Hopkins, is going to be healthy. So we'll get into that here in a second as well. But what do you think about Will Levis here? At least just week 1. We don't have to go into a full season outlook, but yeah, week 1.
No. Yeah, I don't think it's a good start this week. I like the Bears defense. I know they've got some pieces that we have seen under Eberflus, so it's not the hard knocks bump. It's just we've seen this defense have some good performances, and I'm sitting Levis.
There we go. All right, so let's move on to the backfield here. Let's start with the Titans. Interesting split there with a 1A and 1B type situation. One of these convoluted backfields that we're just dying to see how it shakes out, and I think it's going to take more than 1 week to even determine one side or the other. Which is a tough situation. You kind of just plant your flag on one guy. They're both kind of basically going within a round of each other, or within picks sometimes of each other, in Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard. So where do you have these guys ranked here this week? Are they starts or sits for you? Give us your take.
I mean, I have Pollard as a low end RB2, and I think it's very possible, because the workload should be even, that Spears could be flex worthy. I don't want to play either one. You know what I mean? Like I purposely avoided drafting these guys. If I would have taken either one, I would have taken Spears because he got the extra round discount and hoped I got a higher ceiling player the round earlier. But I think it's going to be difficult, like you said, to figure out if there's enough to see this week. I think it's going to take multiple weeks, and I think it's going to be messy for a while. So I would play Pollard as my RB2 if you drafted him that way, because I think obviously people did. I'd feel better with Spears in my flex, and if you can avoid the situation altogether, that's my recommendation.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see if you could, see how it shakes out. There's a couple places I have Spears, because that was the guy I kind of planted my flag on after being burned by Pollard last year in a couple places, and was able to pick up Spears in a couple places that really helped me out. So there's kind of that bias that goes into it as well. So I do like Spears just pass catching, upside there, especially in half or full PPR type leagues. In those 0, RB type builds, maybe you are finding yourself having to start him or someone like Chase Brown, as your RB2 even, in some of those type of builds, if you went wide receiver heavy, an elite tight end, elite wide receiver. So between Spears and Chase Brown, if you had to start one this week, who do you got?
I would take Spears.
Okay. I literally have them back to back, Spears over Brown too.
Yeah, I like Spears.
Interesting. All right. All right. So where do we want to fly to now? Bears running back field. So We got DeAndre Swift, obviously the new addition over there. Khalil Herbert didn't get traded to the Dallas Cowboys. They pick up not yet. I mean, they pick up Cook instead. So I'm sure we'll get to that on Friday when we cover the Dallas game. I don't think we're doing Dallas tonight. And so what are we thinking here? Khalil Herbert, is he the goal line back? Is he short yardage? Is he going to have a role? Or is this the DeAndre Swift show finally? Is he going to be the goal line back? We've seen basically the guy who's been the second fiddle to DeAndre Swift has been like the touchdown leader, I think, like the last 2 or 3 years in the top 5 at least. Yep. So what do you think about this Bears backfield?
I think you're starting Swift as your RB2 because that's how you drafted him. There's some upside there. If he gets a short yardage situation and breaks off a touchdown, that's great. I think it's very possible Khalil Herbert's the goal line back. And I think for that reason, it just lowers the ceiling for Swift. You're still starting him, but your ceiling's lower. But I'm not starting Herbert just because I think he might be the goal line back.
Fair enough. Yeah, I have Herbert as the sit as well, but I am interested to see, what happens. As far as Swift goes, I have him as RB24, so literally right at that RB2 kind of point. So yeah, you pretty much drafted him there, especially in your hero RB builds, most likely as your RB2. I think you roll with him. You could be in worse situations. Swift or Spears, who do you got?
Swift's still the starter. Spears is a backup / in a committee, so it's Swift.
I have a pretty big gap, 24 for Swift, and Spears is at 35 for me. Still a RB3 flex type RB, but with Spears, but I definitely have Swift, well.
But ask me that question in 5-6 weeks. That's why
totally
changed. I had to think about it for a second. I was like, it's not that close, but it's close.
Yeah, so you're on Dynasty brain still. You're all still thinking ahead. Yeah, we're just talking week 1 here. All right. So let's move on to the wide receiver room here. Let's see. For the Bears side of things, you have the trio there. Obviously of DJ Moore, who got paid this offseason. You have the new addition in Rome Odunze, and then the veteran signing of Keenan Allen, who's been eating all kinds of things apparently, allegedly, and also dealing with a little injury, I believe, to his heel. I think I wrote it on the sheet. Yeah. I don't know why. Was it a heel?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I wrote all this earlier, so it's all kind of still in here. I just got to refer to the sheet there. So he was limited, but so we'll see what happens. I personally hope he doesn't sit because I'd love to see Rome Odunze kind of see what he'd just get a little sneak peek on what it potentially could be without Allen there here in week 1. But yeah, so with these trios, who you starting, who you sitting between these 3 guys?
I mean, in the Bears, it's pretty simple. I'm starting DJ Moore. We all want it to happen so badly for Rome. Probably not starting him this week. I want to see it. Keenan is out with the heel. You got to pay attention to the news there. I think that's it. Pretty easy for me in that room.
All right. I'm basically the same way there too. I might be forced to kind of start Odunze in a flex in a couple 3 wide receiver leagues that I just went and got him for anyway. Maybe I could, pull Christian Watson or Jordan Addison in there who kind of fell in drafts. Maybe I can move him ahead. But a lot of those teams that I have Odunze, I have them stacked with Caleb and Superflex. So I'm just probably going to start him anyway. Just why not? It's week 1. I can recover. I like to get all my, the stuff that you want to, these decisions that you're training yourself to make. I like pulling the trigger on those. Just a little quick fantasy 101. I like pulling those gut feeling. Pull the trigger early in the season so that kind of how you'll be more comfortable with either making or not making a decision later in the season when it matters a little more. Let's just hope that decision you made earlier isn't why you're making that decision later, but we can talk circles around it, but just a little, I understand both sides, but I wanted to throw that out there. All right. So what else have we covered here? Titans wide receiver room, DeAndre Hopkins, obviously coming back from that knee injury. They were saying 4 to 6 weeks. He has started practicing on a limited basis again. So just keep your eye on that. I don't think we have a full answer there. So Calvin Ridley and the new addition, Tyler Boyd. Where do you have these 2 ranked? And tell me where you would kind of have Hopkins if he's active and non-active.
I don't care if Hopkins is active. I'm not starting him.
Okay.
It's too soon. I'm out. Not super stoked on Tyler Boyd in this matchup. I think it's Calvin Ridley, and I think they're going to run the ball. So I think Calvin Ridley has a wide receiver 2 in him, and if there's a touchdown, it's a higher end wide receiver 2 in his range of outcomes for me this week.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. So I pretty much agree. I'm sitting Hopkins. I just kind of want to see, let him get healthy, see what happens. haven't been the biggest Ridley fan this year, although I think he went fairly decent pricing. I don't think I really got him anywhere though. Don't really have too many shares on 19 teams, so doesn't not an offense I was kind of targeting this offseason. Just overall, except for that Dajay Spears for whatever reason, just the passing, back on a bad offense is almost kind of nice sometimes. And then so same thing with Tyler Boyd, not starting him here in week 1, but interesting to see what could happen there with him away from being in Cincinnati, to see if he's that guy or was it just kind of the scheme over there, because he showed flashes where he's been pretty good whenever Chase or Higgins were out. So interesting piece for them. And their defense has actually kind of improved this year, isn't it, Tennessee? Like, I think they made some moves on defense, right?
Yeah,
again, they got Snead, they got a couple other pieces. So, yeah, we'll see. All right, so that should wrap up Titans Bears. Let's move on here to our next game, which is going to be Patriots at Bengals. We have the Bengals, I think, favored by something. I think your timestamp erased what the over under is there. I have it already on there. It was 8. See, good thing I already had the titles there. So we have Bengals favored by 8, a 40.5 point over under. So obviously Patriots coming in as one of the worst expected offenses here. Obviously a lot of those 40 points are probably projected on the Bengals side. So let's start here. Quarterbacks, obviously a clear start with Joe Burrow. I assume a clear sit with Jacoby Brissett. So we'll save some time there. Running backs we can talk about. Ramondre Stevenson. Let's start there on the Patriots side. Even in this, bottom offense, is Ramondre Stevenson someone you can find in an RB2 or flex type role this week?
Can I take some liberty on the show for a minute?
Of course.
Can we just please talk about the Bengals and give more time to what we need to talk about? Because let me tell you this.
All right.
Start Ramondre Stevenson and move on. Just get out of the Patriots. Don't do it. Don't touch it. I don't care if Hunter Henry's a dart throw. Start.
All right. So let's do it. Let's talk Bengals, man. Let's do it. Jamar Chase comes back to practice here today. Still not signed. Left after Zach Taylor said, he's going to have him here week 1. It was like, nah, which I kind of called. We talked about that on a couple other episodes ago. Came back though for practice here this week. We talked about it like Tuesday. I was freaking out. He didn't sign on Tuesday, which I was like, he has to be there Wednesday to practice. He actually didn't sign, but still practiced Tuesday. Interesting situation because he does have 2 years left. So he doesn't really have the leverage, except for the fact that they are trying to win. Joe Burrow's healthy. They have a nice team. They have Higgins on their franchise tag. This could be their, chance. Good defense. Let's talk about it, man. How do you feel about these Bengals? I'll just open it up to you. You tell me what you want to talk about.
I mean, Joe Burrow to me is, first of all, he was plus 250. He's the odds-on favorite to win comeback player of the year. They have got a couple of pieces. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be a huge offensive line expert, but supposedly they've upgraded some spots that they needed to keep him upright. He's an auto start for me every week. You probably drafted him as your QB1. Move on. I think Jamar Chase is a very real game time decision, which is awful, which is why you put the Packers and the Ravens and the Chiefs in your flex spot so that you could potentially put Jamar Chase, in your wide receiver spot. So you could potentially put Jamar Chase in your flex. But you have to be willing to risk it. It doesn't make sense to me from a managerial perspective. They're going to pay him. I understand the ramifications of what happens if they pay him this year versus next year. But what if Higgins is really gone and you're really getting rid of him? Like, just pay Chase, make him happy. He's your best chance to win. Burrow's healthy. The defense is healthy. And at this point, you're right. There's no leverage, but if you're going to sell Higgins, we've been talking about this all offseason. If you're just going to dump Higgins next year and the writing seems to be on the wall for that, then why is this maybe the books are just awful. And that could be the issue that you just don't know and they're not going to tell you, is maybe the books, maybe they want to pay him. Maybe they can't. Maybe they got to clean some other stuff up first before they can give him the contract that they know he's worth. So
And supposedly he said all he wants is like a penny more than Justin Jefferson, which is still a lot, but it's not like he's asking for $50 million a year. So you know what I mean? It's the going rate for a receiver of his talent is what he's asking for. We saw Brandon Ayuk, of course, settle for $30 million. Justin Jefferson's at 35, or did he get up to 38 or something like that? 37 and a half. Yeah, double check that. But they're getting up there. I guess if that's the going rate and what he's worth, my whole thing is pay him now before you have to pay him $50 million next year. like you're going to get away cheaper doing it now, and then just maybe extending him a little earlier and just be early with it. I'd rather be early than late, because if not, you're in a situation like you were with Dak Prescott. Like, they could have extended him and paid him only like 20 something million a year, which they didn't want to pay. And the next thing you know, people were getting quarterbacks at 30, 40, 50 million. And they end up with sign him at 35, I think, at the time, which now is nothing. Like, Baker makes like 35 million a year, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, I don't know, man. It's kind of crazy situation. So yeah, like you said, maybe there's just something we're not seeing. Hopefully they can just get a backdoor deal in place and just kind of say, look, bro, like, pay out the season. We're going to pay you, and you're going to get more next year. If you just hold off, like, you're still covered, you're under contract, and we'll still extend you. Like, as long as you don't get like paralyzed, I guess, like, we're still going to pay you. Like, even if he had like an ACL, I would still pay him. Like, we've seen it happen in the NBA. Kevin Garnett torn Achilles, still got the max. We saw, Klay Thompson tear his Achilles and ACL and still get the max. Granted, maybe they didn't age, well. Kevin Durant's still doing good, but again, he's young enough to where even if he has like something like that, we've seen, with technology that, it still would be worth the investment, and that can happen to anybody on any play anyway. So just, I would pay him sooner than later. And let's, maybe I'm talking more as a, very heavily Chase owner, but let's get this guy on the field. let's see some football, man. I want to see football with Jamar Chase in it, not with him not out. We want to see the best players in the world compete. I don't want to see some guy just sitting out. So it's easy to say from here when you're not writing the check, I guess.
But I mean, if you're going to pay him now, why didn't you pay him weeks ago? It's just, let's just get him on the field, but it's going to be one to watch.
Yeah. So there we go.
Outside of that.
Oh, hold on real quick. Rafi said, even Chase plays, it would take him a couple of weeks to get ready. Potentially similar to Ayuk. I actually think that's different. Apparently Joe Burrow did come out today and say, like, Jamar Chase, like, and I saw some of the videos too, like, dude looks like he's in shape, like he's ready to go. Like, and I've seen how he trains in the off. Like, again, I have a lot of Jamar Chase, so I've done a lot of deep dives on YouTube, watching workout videos and stuff like that. Just since he's been, he's been my keeper since his rookie year. Deep. Yeah, I'm like real deep on it. So like, when it comes to this, like, dude's in shape. Like, he's not going to be in shape. Like, this dude wants to be the best. Like, and him and Jefferson, who is the best, right? Like, they are so competitive with each other, and they push each other to be even better, which is why I like it, and which is why he just wants a penny more than him. And because they're that competitive. So get this guy on the field, man, and he's gonna do a lot for you.
Yep, let's do it.
So, all right. So, real quick, running back, Zach Moss. Now we come off of that high. T. Higgins obviously is a must start if Chase, for whatever reason, doesn't play. But even if he's active, like, I'm still firing up Chase week one. If he's playing, he's in my lineups. I don't care. And T. Higgins, I'm still starting if Chase is there, but he's almost a start of the week if he's not there. Which brings up, Andre Yoshiva. I think I said that right this time, finally, thanks to the chat a couple weeks ago. And then our boy Jermaine Burton, who we drafted a lot of in best ball. I know you and I in this offseason in Dynasty. Will either one of these guys, if Chase does sit, are you going to get one of these guys in your lineup as a flex, or are you still wanting to see what happens?
No, I think it's still Higgins, and then honestly, because there's nothing else, it makes an easy transition for us. I think that's when a Zach Moss or Chase Browns becomes more interesting, especially in like a half or full PPR situation if Chase does sit. Because I just don't see the targets going to those other wide receivers at enough volume to impact your fantasy lineup. Sure, they're going to get targets and a couple catches, but I think the boost would go to Higgins for sure, and then the running backs.
Right. Yeah, tight ends, Mike Gesicki, we're not starting Mike Gesicki. So, yeah, so that should wrap up Patriots Bengals. So, good stuff there. Good discussion. It was nice to finally get that out. We've been texting a lot about it, but it was nice to kind of voice some of that. Yeah, we've been talking about it all day. All right, so let's bring up this next game here, man. We have another one that should be a very interesting game. Can't wait to watch this one. Texans, I think they're the only away team favored at least out of these 8 games that we're previewing here tonight. Favored by 3 against the Colts at home with a 49-point over-under. So they're expecting points. Obviously, high-powered offense on the Texans side. We've seen, the potential ceiling type where Anthony Richardson can get his team. So let's start there with the quarterbacks. Obviously, 1 QB and Superflex. These 2 are must starts when we move on. We've talked enough about him here this offseason. We'll go to the running back position. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor's a must start there. Trey Sermon, his backup. He's a sit, just a handcuff. And maybe not even that great of a handcuff, even if something were to happen to Jonathan Taylor. So I don't even think he's really worth rostering at this point in your standard just redraft, 5 or 6 bench leagues. On the other side of the ball, we have Joe Mixon, looks to be the presumed bell cow was dealing with, I believe, with a quad injury. He's back to practice, so he's 100% ready to go. You have, of course, Damian Pierce right behind him. Obviously Mixon, I assume, is a must-start RB2 for you.
For sure, but you're discounting Cam Akers, the darling of the preseason.
Oh my God, Cam Akers! I don't even know if I don't even think I have him in my top 60 like ranked. I don't even think he made my top. Actually, I ranked 72 guys this week. I don't even think Cam Akers is here.
I'll be honest with you. I think this game's really easy and really straightforward.
Let's do it.
You're starting the quarterbacks. That's a no-brainer. You're starting Mixon. That's a no-brainer. You're starting JT. That's a no-brainer. I don't think
Pittman, you kind of have to start.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think you're starting anybody except for Pittman, even AD Mitchell. I think you can afford to wait a week. If you, like you said earlier, if you want to take a risk and it costs you, this could be the week to do it. But I think it's Pittman.
Only more importantly because no Josh Downs potentially. Like if he sits, he's dealing with that high ankle sprain, 4 to 6 weeks. He's kind of at that, and he's somewhere like at that 5-week mark, so not quite back. And we've seen those be a little devastating. So I just want to see AD Mitchell pop, and I'd love to have it just happen on my bench as an asset, one of those lotto tickets, because I'm heavily invested in AD Mitchell in several places.
Nobody would be happier if that happens than the two of us, man. We're in the lotto too. We got hands on the ticket. So I mean, I'm with you, but I think it's Pittman. I think it's the running backs. I think it's the quarterbacks, and then I think you have it's not the tight ends unless you have Schultz as your guy, and then you need to play Schultz. But
right.
I think what we should spend a couple minutes talking about this game on is what everyone needs to know, which is the Houston wide receiver room. So
yes,
I think for me, it's simple. If you drafted all three of them, or not, excuse me, you did not.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
If you drafted one of them, right, then you have to play them. The question is like, we don't know what the Colts defense is. It was a playoff team last year, but it's a new season. I think you just, assuming health, I think you're going to have to figure out each week, which scheme fits the skill set, of what each guy brings, because that's where they're going to potentially have the real sit-start, questions if you have to, if your team is fortunate, you know what I mean? Like that's where it could be, hey, look, this just may not be Nico's week. So that's what I think you have to figure out going forward. But I think for this week, all three of them are in there, and whoever gets the touchdown wins the week. And that's how I think it goes.
Yeah. And like you said, I think you probably drafted Tank more as a flex. So it's nice to be there. Collins is most likely your wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, so you pretty much have to roll with him. Diggs is the only one where I've seen kind of a wide range, of almost a 2 to 3 round, discrepancy. You could see him, go sometimes as early as like the mid-3rd, and sometimes he'd fall to mid-6th. Like I've literally done enough mocks to see that kind of happen over the offseason, just depending on the 11 other guys or so that you're with. And so I think you kind of just have to take a chance with, the guys you drafted there. Unless again you have just crazy wide receiver depth where you can hold off and kind of see how this wide receiver room shakes out. But again, I think it just could be anybody any week, depending on who the defense takes out. Like Stroud's going to find the other 1 or 2 guys, and this offense is just going to, roll kind of like Detroit last year or Houston last year.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, Houston allowed to say themselves. And look, the Texans have a good defense. Will Anderson's real. I mean, he's a guy that defensive player, rookie of the year. You got the offensive rookie of the year on the same team, right? So you got both sides of the ball. What does that mean for Richardson? Who knows? We'll find out. It's an answer. Everyone needs the answer to that question. But
right.
I just want to say this. We can move on to the next game.
Yeah.
I've been really down on Steph Diggs. I'm not going to not start him until I have to. You know what I mean? Like I'm still going to start him, and I'm not someone who's drafted him anywhere in redraft, and I don't have any shares in Dynasty because that's not his value right now. But I think you have to start him until he proves that he's just not start worthy, or he goes and yells at Stroud, whatever he does. It does his craziness.
Right. Yeah, it goes off like Shaw's gonna be like, nah, just throw the Tank a little more.
Let's talk about the Battle of Florida, man. Let's finish this up.
Let's do it. Let's get this thing done. Our last game here of the night. And it's a doozy. We have Jags at the Dolphins, another home team favored. Dolphins favored by 3.5 with another 49-point over/under. So potential shootout here. When these games start getting close to 50 or in the low 50s, that means usually it means we're going to have like a 10 to 14 game is actually what it usually means. Right. But yeah, obviously it's implied that these offenses are going to put points up on the board. Obviously Dolphins defense kind of was decimated here this offseason with, just losing free agents and a ton of injuries, across the way that peaked in towards the middle and end of last year. And then you have, on the Jaguars side, obviously got rid of Ridley, got the rookie and Brian BTJ, and Christian Kirk still there. and they went out and got Gabe Davis in free agency. So obviously we're probably starting these. I mean, these are kind of fringe quarterbacks, so let's actually kind of start there real quick. Do you have these guys in your top 12 where they sits in one QB leagues? I mean, we're assuming their starts in your super flex leagues.
Their starts in super flex, 100%. I think Tua can crack the top 12 just because of the weapons that are there. So I think if he's your QB and a 1 QB, you can start him. I also think if he's a guy like you punted late and you don't have a choice, I think he could be a good play this week. It's one of the higher scoring games on the slate. The thing that's really interesting about the Dolphins, which is we know what they are, we know what they're capable of, but what a lot of people forgot is their defense got a lot worse this offseason. Christian Wilkins leaving for Vegas, yeah, and then if my memory's right, 1 or 2 other notable guys going as well. That's exactly what you want in fantasy.
Yes,
great offense that can score and score quick, and terrible defense. So I love the Dolphins. So yeah, fire Tua up. I would prefer not to start Lawrence. I could easily see him having a back end, 9, 10, 11 QB finish there to get in the QB1 range, because this could be a high scoring game. He may have to throw to keep up. But in a 1 quarterback league, if I don't have to, I think I'd like to go elsewhere.
Okay. I have 2 as my QB 11. So I pretty much have, again, just with that over under and everything you just said, puts him in that QB1 range for me here week 1. And then Trevor Lawrence I have in that middle area, kind of at my QB 15. So kind of right in there with you. I do have him above Caleb Williams. The one that's questionable is Jaden Daniels. I have him at 17. I don't know if I should get him up there. His potential is crazy, but he's still, so I don't know quite where to put him, but I felt, a little more comfortable with Caleb and Trevor ahead of him. So that's where I'm at. And Trevor right behind Brock Purdy and Matt Stafford there as well too. So that's that. All right. So, wide receiver is pretty easy on the Dolphin side. You're starting Tyreek, you're starting Waddle, no brainer. There's literally no other wide receivers there. OBJ, IR, literally nobody there. You got the tight ends. You're staying away from those tight ends, Jonas Smith and Smythe. And I can't think of his first name right now. But either way, don't start them. We don't even know. On the other side, with these wide receivers, let's talk about that for a second. You have Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis, and the rookie Brian Thomas Jr. Where do you have these guys as starts and sits this week?
I think Christian Kirk's in that wide receiver 3 range, so he's definitely someone that's flex worthy. If it's a 2 wide receiver league, I'd prefer to put him in the flex instead of the wide receiver spot. They do play late in the weekend, so you can afford to do so.
Nice.
I just don't know what the ceiling is going to be. Like I said, the Dolphins, we expect the defense to be really bad, so it's certainly a week where Trevor could throw it, and that could benefit Kirk. So he's absolutely flex worthy. I just think there may be a little bit of a first week. It's just first week for everybody, right? No matter how long you've been in the league, you still got to iron some stuff out. So I always think the ceilings are just a little bit lower across the board in week 1.
I think you kind of favor the offense a little more too, right? Because schemes and things aren't, out quite introduced there, and a lot of changes. A lot easier just to throw and catch, right?
Yeah,
when you know where you're going.
Outside of Kirk, I like BTJ. I think he's gonna have a great season. I think he will evolve into their wide receiver 1. He's very different than Kirk is, but I think if I'm going to take my shot, I'm probably taking my shot on Kirk. Rapport, been in the league, and I think that's probably where first NFL game for BTJ. So I think that's where the volume goes. If you're going to take a shot on one of the Jaguars, so I'd probably sit BTJ.
Go. I have BTJ as a sit as well this week. I just want to see what he does, but I do like his potential upside, like what I saw in preseason. Have him as my wide receiver 47 right now. Christian Kirk, right in there as that kind of flex wide receiver 3 at wide receiver 28. And Gabe Davis, again, more of a best ball play. And I have him down actually at wide receiver 61, just because I'm not sure what to do with them, or is he the Gabe Davis from the Bills?
That's what you did. You did the right thing.
61. Yeah, so I just kind of was like, I don't want to, put any, we might miss out, but hey, if I see it, then all right, cool. But I kind of want to see what happens.
As a fantasy community, we need to have a rule about guys that have just burned you by a certain number of, like the 3 strike rule. Like, okay, man, I'm done. Like, it's someone else's turn. I'm done with Gabe Davis. Don't put him in your lineup. Draft him in best ball. Don't draft him in redraft. Don't have him in dynasty.
So you don't have to even worry about it. Yeah, don't even stress about it.
Only. Move on.
Yeah. And so Frank and I, we call it our do not touch list. So I mean, I'm sure it's not very unique, but yeah, that's our do not touch list. So there's certain guys that are just not going to happen. All right. So who else have we got here? Anything else we have on this team here? Really? Obviously, Evan Ingram, he's a starter. You're starting him. Travis Etienne, no brainer starter. Workhorse role there. Tink Bigsby, I just have as a handcuff. Let's talk about this. Actually, the running back room on the other side with Achane, Mostert there. Jalen Wright, obviously, I'm sure is a sit here week 1. But how do you have Mostert and Achane? Because when I started doing my rankings, Achane was one of the most interesting ones. Obviously, he was going kind of like at that 2-3 turn, even moved up sometimes in that like mid-second. I seen people going. When I started putting pen to paper here, I have Devon Achane as my RB13 here this week, but I'm not sure where to put him. He's kind of like Gabe Davis, like he could like literally pop off crazy or have 10 touches for no yards, right? Like, I mean, where are we at with Achane? Where are you at?
Don't do the man like that. Don't put Achane.
All right.
Davis. No shot.
All right.
Achane's not going to goose you, right? Like that's the difference. David could run 97% of the routes and goose you.
He's Gabe Davis is the second best blocking wide receiver behind, of course, Juwan Jennings. So
I mean, that dude just runs around. His fitness is off the charts.
All cardio team.
All cardio team, 100%. I don't know what to do with Achane other than start him, right? Like you just you
kind of have to.
The last thing you want to do is not start him and then see 39 points on your bench on Monday morning. You know what I mean?
When you drafted him in the second round,
yeah. So like you're starting him. Again, we talked about him a couple minutes ago. Like week 1, the ceilings are all a little bit lower, but Achane doesn't. He has a ceiling obviously because he's only going to get so many touches. But we've said this before in the summer. We'll say it again now. Achane can do in 18 to 19 touches what it's going to take Kamara, James Conner to do in 30. And they may not even still get that high, right? So it's like his volume doesn't have to be there. I think you start him. I love Devon Achane. I really want him as my RB2. If you're fortunate enough, if you started running back, and some people did build that way, or if you're in a keeper league and you're fortunate enough to keep him late on, so he was late. So a lot of keeper leagues, I've seen him in the 6th all the way to the 15th round. So it's possible he's your RB2, and I think that makes me feel awesome.
A lot better.
Yeah, Mostert still the starter, and that's why I feel like Achane is
still RB2 good with him as an RB2 too.
And I'm all exactly my point. So I think they're this year's kind of Najee and Warren, but with so much more upside, right? But they both kind of finished around the same fantasy value. I think if it's a big if, but if Achane and Mostert can stay healthy most of the season, they'll probably have similar outcomes. Mostert will get more of the work, but Achane can outscore him. That's the whole point.
Yeah, and like I said, Achane at RB13 for me, and I have Mostert at RB21.
Yeah,
so
I mean that's and I think
don't know where else to put him.
If you're in, you and I try to build pretty similarly. We go pretty wide receiver heavy, but some people still have a little bit of a favorite towards the running back. So if you're a thin wide receiver team, I think you can certainly flex Mostert. If you've got 2 other guys and Mostert's your 3rd running back, you can absolutely do that if you're thin at wide receiver.
For sure. And funny here. And again, if you guys need or want a question answered right away, you can drop a super chat. Just like Savannah's comment here real quick. Seahawks going to smash the Broncos. The reason I bring that up here in this situation is I actually have Kenneth Walker in at RB12 right ahead of Achane just because of that matchup this week. So I'm right there with you, Savannah. I can't really necessarily say all that. Obviously, you see this is not a 49ers podcast. Just Phil and I happen to be Niners fans here on Get Right Fantasy Network. But yeah, I can't say all these things that you're saying, but I will go ahead and put it up on the screen there for you. So appreciate it. Hopefully you guys have hit that subscribe button for us. If you're already subscribed, hit that like button for us as well. Make sure you guys are subscribed to my boy Phil over here over at The Extra Point. If you like the fire he's been dropping here tonight, make sure you check him out. He will be live tomorrow at 4 p.m., leading you right up to kickoff here week 1. He did drop his link in the description, so pop over there real quick. Hit him that like and subscribe button on the video, and make sure you guys are getting his content as well. So let's was that it, or we got one more? Is that it?
That's it.
We're done. Let's go.
We got to end with the ambiguous, the most ambiguous, most fun running back room in the NFL.
Man, that was good. Yeah, that was a good talk, and not too bad. I mean, we finished at only 20 minutes over, and there's a lot of stuff to really set up. And we haven't really been talking about these in this fashion.
We'll clean it up.
So next Friday, once we kind of have some more data, we'll get a little cleaner here, but I don't
Hey,
think that was too
Rasta,
bad,
it's week 1, buddy.
bro.
Dude,
We're here.
We're here. We're pretty smooth on that. We got some
Hey,
stuff to clean up.
and it's
just
our
like all
first
these
time.
teams.
Yeah, normally
Bro.
it's me and Classic Mike that usually do the start sit show. So you and I first time. I think it went really well, my friend. We're going to enjoy doing it. So let's get to that thing that you guys have been waiting for. We're going to scroll all the way back up to the chat here. Let's spend some time here, maybe about 10 minutes or so. We'll get to as many questions as we can. We have George from the top saying, can you rate his team? And again, when you guys do drop your questions, try to put like league size, PPR, non-PPR, 6.4 point if QBs are involved. Just as much kind of information as we can about the league to give you our best feedback. I kind of filibustered there, hopefully giving you a chance to read this question here, Phil, so I can get your response. He says 12-team non-PPR, Murray, Barkley, Gibbs, Moore, DJ Moore, Jalen Waddle, Kittle. His flex is Javonte. His bench is Cousins, Brian Robinson, Trey Benson, Quorum, Jalen Wright, Flowers, Brian Thomas Jr., and A.D. Mitchell. You think George has been listening to Get Right Fantasy Network or what?
Yeah, I think we all agree. We like a lot of these players. The only thing I question is it a standard league or is it a half PPR? I assume when he says non-PPR, it's a standard league. So touchdowns do matter. And we don't know if it's a 6 or a 4 point. If it's 4 point, I have Kyler Murray. I have all the rushing quarterbacks just a little bit more elevated in a 4 point scoring format. But either way, I love Kyler. Look, let's just go through it. Kyler, fantastic. QB1. Barkley, Gibbs, you got ceiling there. You've got Moore, Waddle as your 2 receivers. We think those are both, and we've seen both be wide receiver 1s. So that's great with the upside for the Bears of a new quarterback. Kittle, you will have inconsistency, but can win you a week. And Javonte's a big wild card. I just took him in a draft an hour or two before the show tonight. I'm curious to see what that is. So I love the bench. I think there's upside on the bench there as well. I see it. I don't know the league. I haven't seen the other rosters, but I see the pieces that you should have a playoff team here. Yeah,
I mean, I like all these pieces, especially the 12-team. George, the only one that I even kind of somewhat disagree with is Javonte, but I don't even hate it technically in this build. I just personally would have probably went with somebody else at that pick, but someone similar. But you have all the other guys. I mean, as far as a bench, this is like a bench from heaven. These are all guys that we all love. Maybe not all together, but at least I know between the two of us, we love every one of these guys. Except for maybe Flowers is the one guy I'm not like that big on, but still to get him
Brian
late.
Brian Robinson for me. So yeah,
just kind of So maybe we swap 1 or 2 out, but yeah, for the most part, between Quorum, Benson, like these are those lotto tickets, Brian Robinson, that you just want to have, on your bench. So well done, George. So we'll get to Kish here. Says Zamir White or Javonte Williams. It is a full PPR.
Zamir White doesn't catch passes, but he's the only guy in town. Javonte does, and it could be a committee.
With McLaughlin, taking the third down work.
It's against my brand, but I'm going to take Zamir White. It's close, but just because of the volume.
Yeah, and I'm kind of looking at it. What I had here, I actually have Zamir White as my RB26 and Javonte as my RB30. Like I said, I am a little down on Javonte, so I'm even White. And believe me, Kish, I do not like the Raiders. So you can go back and watch all of our other shows. So for me to pick a Raider over someone else, you'll know. You'll know that I really feel strongly about that. What up, Season Man? One of the OGs. He said, "What up?" About an hour and a half ago. Let's see. Any other?
Yeah, right here, Miller T here.
Go ahead, pull it up.
So this is my boy Tim. Lots of love. Appreciate you, homie. If you're still watching, thanks, man. Lots of action on the game tomorrow night. Loving some of the bonus action on DraftKings on TD scores. Who do you like as locks to find the end zone tomorrow night, Rasta?
I think you have to say Pacheco would be like my number 1. Like if I had to bet, and then I think it's Kelsey, and then I think it's Henry. Those would be my top 3.
Yeah, I haven't looked and gotten in. Usually I do on Fridays is when I kind of get into the board in the early week. But, as news starts to come out, Fridays kind of when I start to get into the DFS side of the house. If you can find it on certain books, I would absolutely take Pacheco for the over for an anytime scorer. And I would still probably take a rushing touchdown if you only can get him as a rushing touchdown. I think he's the safest on that side. Henry, to me, is easy. I think it is a good bet if you can find it. I don't know if you'll find a line on it, but an anytime touchdown or a rushing touchdown for Jamar Jackson may not also be the worst bet if they do rush twice.
All right, there we go. Good stuff there. We had LeBron here saying he had a question actually for Frank. So maybe Frank will answer here. He says he has a free spot on his bench. Should he look to pick up Mason from the 49ers, Dowdle, or pick up Brees Hall's backup? He has Brees on his team, Mr. Braylon Allen. So who do you got out of those three guys? I know mine. Pretty simple for me. One
Mine's
sticks out
easy.
more than the other, but go ahead. We might be
Mine's-
different but yeah, I want to hear yours.
Mine's Dowdle. It's a committee.
Yeah, that's okay.
And Zeke's, who knows what Zeke is? Dowdle seems to be the guy they're actually maybe favoring right now.
Yeah, the other two are clear backups to the most highest of echelon. Even if they went down and they got their spot, they're not going to produce at those returns. They may still be good, but they're not going to be. Jordan Mason's not putting up CMC numbers. If he was, he'd be a starter somewhere else.
The Niners will just move Debo back there and run through the air.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah. So it's like we got plans B's and C's over there. All right. So good stuff there. If you want to look ahead for questions as well too, and then maybe that'll help if we kind of alternate. We'll get our flow down once we get going here on Fridays. But I think we have one here. We already brought that one up actually during the game. But he has another question. So Wicked Pompano here. He's saying, y'all think there'll be a clear-cut wide receiver one coming out of Green Bay this year, or is it still a toss-up every week?
I think it's a toss-up every week unless there's an injury, and then it becomes more clear. But for me, it's Jaden. It's just too hard. It's just too hard to project it.
See, for me, for whatever reason, and it's like I don't know why, but you know what I mean. You already know what I'm going to say. It's to me the clear-cut is Watson when healthy, man. Like when he's healthy, and the numbers have backed me up on that. It's just, can he stay on the field? I mean, that's the risk. That's the ADP cost that was baked into his ridiculous price. If he was healthy and put up the numbers year over year that he put up at the end of his rookie season, granted that was with Aaron Rodgers, but it is still the same offense for the most part. And Love isn't, a slack off or anything. He can make it happen. And we've seen him and Watson connect as well too. I mean, I think Watson could be right up there, at that 2-3 turn. I mean, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be up there if he would have health.
I think he will be. Put it this way: if he has a season like we hope and have prayed for him to have, and that season is this season, I think
I won't have any of them next year. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's what I mean. He'll be too expensive. That's exactly where he'll go. He'll go in that third round. So.
Exactly, and it'll be priced out. So just like Laporta, loved him last year, have no shares of him in redraft this year. Go ahead.
Our boy, the roll. What's up, man? Appreciate you being here. I know he's in a ton of our Get Right shows. Rate my redraft Superflex 14-teamer roster. All right, we got to change our brains here a minute. 14-teamer.
Nice.
Caleb,
it's a man's league.
That's right. Caleb, Bijan, and Swift at the wide receiver position. Drake London, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Keenan Allen. And then we get into the bench here with Bryce Young, Penix, Fields, Corum, Miles Sanders, Xavier Legette, Keon Coleman, and I don't really want to read that last name, but I'm supposed to. So
yeah, just empty roster spot.
Yeah. Quentin
but it is 14. Yeah. 14.
Wait, how does Ron Burgundy do this? Quentin Johnston?
Question mark?
Yeah. Dang it, yeah.
Nice.
Go ahead. I just read it out. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So for me, I mean, for 14 team, I actually really like it, obviously. Caleb, we talked about kind of when we're doing the breakdowns. I have them kind of at that borderline QB1, QB2, and 1 QB leagues. Obviously, you got your bell cow and Bijan. We talked about Swift most likely being most people's RB2s. Don't love the London Bijan pairing, but it was happening a lot, just the way ADP kind of lined up. So unless you did kind of a ton of mocks and got comfortable kind of either reaching past London there or going just with a different pick, altogether. But still got like Waddle and Devonta, which I would have probably took there and maybe got someone else after Devonta that I liked a little more. Maybe there instead, just to not have that wide receiver running back stack and redraft. Just kind of, increases your volatility there. And then, yeah, Keenan Allen, I mean, we kind of talked about him, don't love him much. I mean, the bench is kind of filled again. Now you're getting into just, I like Corum, Legette could be a potential piece there. Love the Coleman on the bench. The other guys I could take or leave, but it is 14 team league. So you kind of just got to get what you get. But as far as your starters, I think you can compete with that team in a 14 team.
Yeah. I mean, I'm same with the Bijan London thing. I mean, obviously your draft went Bijan, London, Waddle, Smith, probably then Swift. So that's a good value to get our Swift in the 5th, 6th round there. I think the ceiling is a playoff team for the starters. I I think there's guys you like Miles Sanders and QJ you don't need. The only thing I would say is this, just because it did happen a lot. I'd be okay this season taking Cooper Kupp in that middle of the second round, even ahead of a Drake London, if I had Bijan. Like you mentioned, a pivot. I know people will say that's a crazy take, but like we've seen the overall wide receiver one from Cooper Kupp, and we've seen wide receiver one seasons. We're still waiting to see it from Drake London. Sure, this is his best chance.
Right.
But he's being drafted. Him and Garrett Wilson are being drafted as guys who have done this before, and even Marvin Harrison, and they haven't yet. And that's so that,
and we almost have a baseline test because we've seen Kirk Cousins support the wide receiver one overall, who has the talent and then part of the scheme. So we'll see, is Atlanta's scheme and is London's talent on par with the Justin Jefferson, situation? We will find out. And that's why I can't wait, man. A couple more days. We're going to see.
Tomorrow.
I meant for this specific game. We have to wait a couple more days.
No, we're ready to go, man.
So we're there. Anything else you got on his team here? Any other takes or feedback there?
No, I think that's it. It's a good
There we
group,
go.
especially in 14 team.
Go ahead. You had another one? Go ahead.
Yeah, I got one here. Perry W. Rice, McBride, BTJ at flex. Not sure if this was on one of those videos, but I feel
we're always here for you.
Yeah. How do you feel about this? If you have to pick one of those guys, Rice, McBride, or BTJ? Interesting with McBride. I'm curious to hear what you think. Must be I
was going to say, who does he have as
end? Yeah.
Yeah. Is this classic Mike? I mean, Perry, I think, is a Giants fan and does come from Mike's Sunday show. He's always there. But to me, it's an easy Rice. This one as a no-brainer, even with a little bit of a tough matchup against the Ravens. I'm not flexing a tight end. I mean, if you didn't have Rice and it was between BTJ and McBride, then I'd probably flex McBride over Thomas. But that would be my order: Rice, McBride, BTJ.
Yep, 100%. And then the last one here from Rafi. You guys doing any kind of FanDuel daily lineup show? We're gonna have to talk about that after the show or maybe this weekend. I've thought about maybe mixing that into my show. It's Thursday night. It's right before the game. It's right before the weekend. Could be fun to do something in that realm. So I'll always be giving like a little bit of just takes and like some of the small side market betting stuff that I've done. So just some of my own personal takes I'll try to mix in, because I know some people do care about that. But we can
well, and the betting market really plays heavily in the fantasy market, right? Because the people 100%. That are willing to put their money behind these lines and over-unders and things like that, that's a good way to judge what the potential output is going to be from a fantasy lineup from people who are making millions that do this stuff literally for a living. So that's a good source to go to, and honestly makes a lot of decisions. And when it comes to start sit, I'm looking at over-unders and, projected points and things like that, for different matchups, more so than just do I like a player or not like a player in a situation, right? Like a lot of those matchups and things do come into play with that. So and don't forget too, that Classic Mike also does a little casual DFS lineup on Sunday morning. So once he gets through the active and inactive lists, right before he signs off, he does set a DFS lineup that you guys can help set with him. It's a lot of fun. We kind of just do it as like, for the community Sunday morning, put a DFS lineup out there. So, I think Rafi asked another one earlier. He was just kind of went in line with someone else's comment earlier. He said, would these conditions favor the offense or defense more in regards to the week one overseas game in Brazil? I said, typically you would think it's a high scoring game if it were in a normal setting. So we kind of did touch about that, but I wanted to get Rafi's question up here.
Yeah. I mean, I think it favors the offense. I think we both agree on that.
Right. Yeah. As long as conditions are usually fine. What you have to pay attention to is wind. So that's the big, like rain and snow is okay for the most part. I mean, unless the field is just terrible. But for the most part, you have to worry about the winds. So check in. We do go over weather forecast Sunday morning. When on Classics Sunday morning show. So just be sure to check us out then. The Citizen says, $1 million question, Jamar Chase playing or not? So gun to your head, Phil, if you had to put everything on the line, red or black, yes or no, is he suited up week one on Sunday?
He practiced today. He's playing.
I think he's playing too. All right.
That's good. That's going to end on.
Yeah, that was good. I think that's pretty much it, right? I mean, I think everything else was folks just kind of talking back and forth to another. If we did miss your question, we apologize, but remember to guarantee it. You can always drop a super chat to make sure we don't miss it on the future episodes as we continue to get busier here it'll be Friday nights normally, but we're doing this little special episode here on Wednesday. So other than that, man, Of course, the live chat segment is brought to you by our folks over at TrophySmack.com. So there's no other better way to celebrate your fantasy football championship than getting your guys' selves one of these awesome rings, even a belt. Of course, they have trophies, even those Kirk Cousins chains. You can fully customize it as you see here, like our 1,000 subscriber ring that we gave away, which we'll do again at 2,000 subscribers. So make sure you guys are hitting that like and subscribe button for us. But go check out TrophySmack.com. Bring your league to the next level. Having one of these rings, in addition to whatever else you play for, is amazing. Go check out the link down in the description to Trophy Smack, and when you check out, just use that promo code GetRight. Helps support the channel and helps us continue to get this awesome content out here for you guys. So with that said, man, Phil, again, I appreciate you for coming out here with me tonight, man, putting in an hour 35 here on a Wednesday, doing this start sit with me, man. It was a lot of fun, a little preview to our Friday show. So it was almost like a little practice run even for us as well too. But doing it real, man, I know I'm going to enjoy doing it with you. Of course, going to miss Classic, of course, for doing it for years here. But I think a fellow Niner fan here, it'll be a lot of fun for our West Coast peeps, man. So for those folks that may not know who you are or seen you here for the first time that are just coming back to us again, I'm going to give you the full screen here. Let them know who you are, where they can find you, and what you got going on your channel.
Appreciate you. Yeah, so obviously I'm part of Get Right Fantasy Network, so big love to Rasta. Appreciate you having me as a part of this awesome team. You can find me on YouTube every Thursday night at 4 p.m. during the season. It's going to be Pacific time. And we're just going to be going through a couple of quick things for Thursday night game. I do a ton of Dynasty, so I might break down a trade. I might have some questions, Q&A, but we're only going to keep it real short for the game on Thursday night. And then in the off season, we're getting into full Dynasty mode, best ball, DFS, obviously redraft. So you can catch me over at The Extra Point. If you can't watch, go ahead and listen. I am on Spotify and Patreon. So yeah, links in the chat here to follow me on YouTube, and look forward to seeing y'all tomorrow night for a quick episode before we kick off football, Rasta.
Let's go. Absolutely. And there's the sorry I was late on getting your logo up there, man. We'll leave it up for the rest of the show here for a second, so you guys know if you're in the right spot. Make sure you guys go throw this guy a sub. He's going to be bringing you a ton of content as well, and of course here with me on Friday nights. And then, of course, we have our other boy. I'm sure you'll see him on Friday as well. He'll be with Classic doing the part 1 Friday Start Sit show starting next Friday. But he'll probably pop in with us here this Friday night after the game. Our boy Kendall over at the Fantasy Football Tavern. So if you enjoy hot takes and cold beers, make sure you guys go check him out. These are our 2 new guys joining the Get Right Fantasy Network here. So you're going to see a ton of them in their content. And we couldn't be more happy to have these guys join the show. So yeah, man. So other than that, anything else you want to any other take or anything you want to get off your chest before we see fantasy points go on the board? Are you ready to just get this thing going, man?
The amount of times, time we've spent on Dynasty all summer and best ball to finish up with redraft drafts this week. I'm so ready for football tomorrow. Let's go, man. That's it. Let's go.
That's it. It's not even funny, man. We'll be back here after Thursday, after the Friday game. So we'll have 2 games we'll be breaking down, giving you our initial reaction, and then, of course, getting to the rest of the 8 games for the start sit. So from all of us here at Get Right, man, Classic Mike, for Frank, hope you're feeling better, man. He's down sick and couldn't join me here tonight. So again, thank you, Phil, for joining. Of course, for Phil, for our boy Tycoon over at the Boardroom, of course, Kendall, all of us here at the network, man. Happy week 1 to you guys. Good luck tomorrow. It should be a lot of points going up in lineups, man. I cannot wait. We will peel it out of here, man. We will see you on Friday. Good luck, and let's get it going, man. Peace out, fellas.
Wanted to write fantasy is the play. Marking nothing, but I tune in every Friday. Strategies provided.